Miela ponia Rūta, labai džiaugiuosi, kad šiandieną esate Europos Parlamente ir kad turėsite galimybę pristatyti savo knygą Tarp pilkų debesų Briuselio skaitytojams, Europos Parlamento, ES institucijų skaitytojams ir tiems, kas domisi tiek istoriją, tiek literatūrą. Ir norėčiau jūsų paklausti, kadangi daug keliaujate, pristatote savo knygą, tai vienokios, ko gero, reakcijos yra Amerikoje, kitokios yra Lietuvoje, vėl kitokios yra toje pačioje Europoje. Kokius jūs skirtumus įvardintumėt ir kaip jūs manote, ar tas žinomumas Lietuvos, Baltijos šalių istorijos, ar jisai šituo būdu auga dėka jūsų knygos? Mano manimu taip ir aš už tai esu jums labai dėkinga, bet norėtųsi jūsų įžvalgų.
There are so many different reactions, and I never anticipated that. You know, as an author, you write a book and you think that you understand what your book is about. But then you go on tour and you meet readers, and readers tell you what your book is about. And the book is now published in 43 countries and 26 languages. And in each country, they use the book to study something different. For example, in France, they use the book to study identity. How much can be taken away from a human being before we lose our identity? In the United States, we use the book to study courage and survival. And in Spain, they use the book to study patriotism. And this is all related to each country's personal history. And in Japan, they use the book to study compassionate courage and human dignity. And all of the things that they use the story of Lithuania to study is helping them learn more about themselves. So in a way, you can say that it's not only studying history, it's a self-study, it's a self-evaluation, because when you read a book, you often put yourself in the main character's situation, and you ask yourself, in the example of this book, would I survive? So it's a self-study. And I think that's very different than a film or a television show. In a film, we're presented with the images and we accept what we see on screen. But in a book, the reader enters a creative partnership with the author, and it's the reader who creates the characters, who really amplifies the emotion and determines at the end what the lesson or the message is. So it's been a very powerful journey for me, not only to recognize the history of these Baltic countries, but to realize the lesson that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, the lessons that they're bringing to the world on a global stage.
Mes daug kalbame apie tai, kaip jaunimas reaguoja į istorinius dalykus. Ir mano galva ypatingai svarbu yra kalbėti šiandieną, kada nepriklausomai Lietuvoje užaugo jau nauja karta ir galbūt tam tikri dalykai, kalbant apie istorinius patyrimus, nebėra savaime suprantami. Tai aš kažkaip labai tikrai džiaugiuosi jūsų knyga, todėl kad tai yra būtent instrumentas padedantis jauniems žmonėms atrasti tokį ryšį per labai suprantamus dalykus, per emocijas, jausmus, tiesiog tapatinantis galbūt su tais herojais ir surandant tam tikrus bendrus taškus. Tai mano dar būtų klausimas, kaip jūs matote tos jaunus žmonės Lietuvoje, ar jie pakankamai žino apie neseną palyginus istoriją ir kaip jaunimas kitose šalyse reaguoja, galvojant apie tai, galbūt Lietuvos vardas jiems girdimas pirmą sykį.
Yes, at first, when they hear the book is about Lithuania, there's always a moment of confusion. Where's Lithuania? What is Lithuania? But I think, again, that is one of the benefits of fiction, because history can be boring and it can be full of facts and statistics. But suddenly, through characters and story, the statistics, they become human, and we cheer for them and we cry for them. And suddenly their history matters. And as the readers are reading about these characters from Lithuania, they go to the map and they have to look where Lithuania is, and they tell me that they're reading online and they're researching more about Lithuania. And now readers of the book in countries all over, they're sending me examples of artwork that they've created based on the story of Lithuania, scrapbooks, pieces of art for Siberia. And so they're very much feeling the emotional impact of this piece of history, and it's resonating with them in a very deep way. It's providing them a microscope to look into their own life and say, if I were this Lithuanian person, and the NKVD came to my door, and I had 20 minutes to prepare, what would I take? Would I survive? The Lithuanian history is raising all these questions for young readers, and so I think that's one of the powerful elements of fiction is to raise questions, but not necessarily push the answers. You know, so good art creates questions, but allows the viewer or the reader to interpret the answer. And that's what I'm finding is happening with young people. And I'll go to a book club meeting and I listen to the teenagers discuss the book and argue about certain parts of the history and what should and shouldn't be. And what I love about it is that they're thinking critically. They're not just accepting what is what they're reading. They're walking around the entire issue. They're asking questions, they're formulating answers, they're doing research. And that's because they're so inspired by the story of Lithuania. And I would hope, to your point about young Lithuanians, I would hope that they would realize how full and rich their history is. Stories not only of Siberia, but of the book smugglers, of the partisans, of people who were sent to gulags, of the story of the Baltic Way. These are such powerful examples of humanity and freedom and hope and courage. And those themes are universal. And they happen to be coming from Lithuania, which I want everybody to know about. But although they're coming from Lithuania, they apply globally.
Dažnai Europos parlamente ir apskritai bendraujant su savo bičiuliais tiek Europoje, turiu minty politinį lygmenį, tiek su kaimyninėmis valstybėmis, dažni tokie nesusikalbėjimai galbūt vyksta dėl tam tikros vieni kitų nepažinimo. Mes svarstome daug dalykų susijusių su energetikos politika, su santykiais su trečiomis šalimis ir kartais tikrai sulaukiame tokio galbūt tam tikro nesupratimo, nes žmonės nepakankamai žino, kokią mes istoriją turim ir kokią kaiminystę mes turime ir turėjome. Ir ar manytumėt, kad jūsų knyga gali prisidėti prie šito tokio supratimo vakarų Europoje ir bendrai pasaulyje, kalbant ne vien tik apie bendražmogiškas vertybės ir tam tikrus dalykus, bet kalbant ir apie tokius konkrečius dalykus, kada vieni kitus labiau pažindami, suprasdami istoriją, galbūt atsižvelgtumėme ir į nūdienos nuogąstavimus?
I hope so, because I agree with you. I think although the future is important and today is important, in many ways we're defined by our past, and the way that we act and we react is based on our past experience. And so it's crucial that countries fully have an understanding of each other's history, because that's the basis from which we march forward into the future. And how could they understand your feeling today on energy policy or your neighbor if they don't understand your past history? And I'm speaking broadly. I don't mean simply, other countries in Lithuania, just in general, for all of us. How could I do business, for example, effectively with someone from Bulgaria if I didn't understand the identity of the country and their values and their history? And just like I said, it's been interesting to me to see how the different countries and the readerships interpret this story. I've learned so much, not only about the story, but about the countries. For example, that Spain uses patriotism to study the book, and France uses identity. That's a very important concept to the French, the concept of identity. Learning about these different aspects helps me better relate to the students in those countries, the teachers, the librarians. And I think that definitely applies here. If you're going to work together in harmony, you really have to have or at least try to have an understanding. I think to some extent, it's impossible to have a deep understanding of everything. But I really think, to work together, there has to be a mutual respect, and that comes from understanding the roots and where someone comes from.
Ir jūsų asmeninė patirtis, jūs kilusi iš Lietuvos, bet ilgą laiką to tokio stipraus dialogo su šita šalim arba su jos istorija galbūt nebuvo. Kas privertė jūs atrasti šitą galbūt temą, jeigu galėčiau taip sakyti, ir kaip tai pakeitė, nežinau, tiek jūs pačią ir jūsų šeimos, kuri turi lietuviškų šaknų, gyvenimą?
Well, I've always had an identity of being a Lithuanian, and that's because I have a Lithuanian name. Rūta Šepetys is, people in America, they don't have names like Rūta Šepetys. My husband, his name is Michael Smith. That's American. And so even as a child, people would ask, Rūta Šepetys, what are you? And I would say, I'm Lithuanian. So as a child, I was very rooted in that identity because I was constantly explaining it. And within my family, my grandparents and my father spoke Lithuanian, and my father married an American. And so we had this mixed sort of atmosphere, and we spoke English in the house. And then as I got older, I became more interested in this identity because I saw consistencies of the identity between Lithuanians. There were consistencies. Education was important. They were had a very good work ethic. Things like this. And so I became more interested. And my father was born in Kaunas and left in 1940, and came to the United States in 1949. And what I didn't know is that when my father left Lithuania, that after the family left, that some of our extended family were deported to Siberia. And when I discovered this, it was not only a shock to me that my family members had been deported to Siberia, but it was a shock to me that the world does not know this part of history. How many people were sent to Siberia, to the gulags, and further, that we study Hitler in school, but there's really no mention of Stalin. And perhaps that was because, the United States, we were allied with Stalin during the war. But regardless, I became very interested in trying to tell this very little known story and trying to bring this history out of the dark. And I'm so grateful that it was my Lithuanian identity and my Lithuanian roots that really drew me to this story. And again, I have to say, I wrote the book, but I don't own the story. It's not my story. The story belongs to Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, to these Baltic countries. But I'm grateful to be able to give voice to the story as a starting point. And the fact that, again, my Lithuanian roots led me now to this destiny where I am a secret spiller is what one of the students called me. I'm digging up these historical secrets and I'm spilling. I couldn't be happier, and it all is because of my Lithuanian heritage, which has now carved out an entirely new path for me and a new part of my life, which I'm really excited about.
Tai labai ačiū už jūsų darbą,
Ačiū labai.
už tą skleidžiamą žinią ir iš tikrųjų sėkmės jums, tikiuosi pasimatyti dar nesykį ir kartu dirbti, kad tas Lietuvos garsas būtų ir Lietuvos vardas būtų geriau žinomas ir girdimas.
I hope so. I hope this is the first of many things that we can do together, including bringing some of the real stories, the real survivor memoirs to the public.
Ačiū. Thank you.
Ačiū.